So I'm a massive fan of the Beatles. I saw Paul McCartney live 2 times in my life, and I'm blessed to have seen him live 2 times. And I never saw Ringo, and I wish I had seen John and George. Obviously, John died before I was born, but and of course, Paul did a bunch of Beatles songs. But I love the Beatles. So when a movie like Yesterday comes out, when I saw the trailer for it, I had to see this movie. I had to, and I did go see Yesterday. I didn't go see it yesterday. I saw it a few days ago, but I haven't been able to do my review yet because I've been really busy with other things. But this film, directed by Danny Boyle, who's the guy who directed Slumdog Millionaire, which was a hugely critically acclaimed film years ago. Big film. And here in this movie, what an incredible concept. And what's crazy about this idea is that I swear to you, I had a dream about something just like this years ago. I remember thinking to myself, wouldn't it be something if we lived in a world where like the Beatles didn't exist and only like I knew their songs? Like, would I take advantage of my knowledge of knowing their music and become a famous rock star? Well, that's what happens in this movie. That's the plot of the film. It's an alternate kind of universe. What ends up happening is the main character, who is Jack Mallett, he's played by Himesh Patel. He gets hit by a bus, and there's like a solar flare, and there's some kind of disruption in time where he gets transported to an alternate universe, sort of like a Donnie Darko type thing. Very weird stuff, but cool. And in this universe, certain things from our current universe don't exist, but everything else is the same. So there's no Beatles, there's no Coca-Cola, and a few other things that just don't exist. And the thing is, he's one of the only people, or maybe the only one, I'm not going to spoil the movie, who remembers the Beatles. So what does he do? He starts playing Beatles songs and nobody knows them, ends up slowly getting recognized until he eventually ends up meeting Ed Sheeran, the real Ed Sheeran, and winds up getting a record deal with a lady named Deborah Hammer, played by Kate McKinnon, who was fantastic in this movie. Kate McKinnon was really funny in this film. You know, I've actually been a fan of hers for a while. She was the only saving grace to me in the Ghostbusters 2016 movie. Some people were very annoyed by her, but I thought she was great there. And in this movie, she's so lovably hateable, right? I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but she's great because she's this greedy record executive who sees Himesh Patel's character, Jack Mallett. She sees Jack as a piece of meat, as dollar signs, and it's such a great reflection of the music business. Even though Ed Sheeran plays himself in the movie, and he's great, and I like his music in real life, but boy, do they made it seem like he was this like incredible singer-songwriter when I think he's fine, but they sort of put him over a little bit harder than I think they should have. But it's okay. I didn't ruin the movie or anything. But the concept of the movie is this alternate world where Jack Mallett tries to become this huge star and ends up becoming a huge star. And they really put him over as being, you know, this the greatest singer-songwriter of all time, you know. And there's so many little jokes here and there about this alternate universe, so many little things that I'm not going to spoil for you because you have to go see this film. And the movie ended up being exactly what I was hoping that it would be, which is a 2-hour it's a 2-hour love fest to the Beatles, both within the characters in the universe and Jack himself, within the audience that ends up adoring Jack for making these great songs that he really did not make. John, Paul, George, and Ringo made them decades ago. And the fact that the movie itself, especially with the climax, the final few scenes of this movie, there's a scene close to the end of this movie that is so moving for Beatles fans. I really don't want to spoil it because it kind of took me a gasp, and I totally loved the meaning behind it, even though it was somewhat bittersweet. It's a scene where if you are a fan of the Beatles, you will be moved. You might not like cry or anything, but it's going to touch you deeply. Hearing these songs in the movies, there were so many legendary Beatles songs in this film. And it's interesting because as I'm watching the movie, I'm wondering, well, okay, we all know the Beatles are legends. They had created some of the best music in the history of mankind. But would these songs really be popular in 2019? You know, would these songs work? For example, you know, I Saw Her Standing There is a big hit, but in the song, Paul McCartney says, well, she was just 17, you know what I mean? So he's enamored by a 17-year-old girl. Now, obviously, the idea of the song is that, you know, he's in high school with her, so they're both 17 years old. That's the story of the song. But you know that nowadays in this era, if you put out a song saying, you know, I want to go dance with a 17-year-old and date her, it's not gonna go right. People on Twitter are gonna come. It just wouldn't work nowadays as the world we live in. Same thing with a lot of the Beatles drug songs. A lot of them were not on this album. Like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was not on this album. Fixing a Hole. I'm sorry, not album. I'm talking like music here. In the movie. They weren't in the movie, but there were a lot of other legendary songs. You know, Revolution didn't make the movie. It would have been cool to kind of have like the government be at war and have him write like Revolution again for the modern era, but that didn't happen. So in the movie, the main story is Jack is dealing with this newfound fame, but he's also trying to stick with his roots. And his best friend Ellie is played by Lily James. She is absolutely adorable in this part. She's so likable. She is Jack's, you know, spine, and what ends up happening with those two characters as the film progresses is such a great freaking story. Like, you're watching the movie and then, you know, this happens, that happens, then the ending, just everything just was written so masterfully. And she's such a likable character. And so Jack, that's her best friend. Like, she's there with him when he gets hit by this bus. And, you know, they love each other. There's real love there, and then it ends up building and then collapsing and then building again. And, you know, it is a roller coaster ride. And a part of that has to do with the fact that not only does Jack have to deal with this newfound fame, so does Ellie, and so do his parents. And there's a lot of really, really funny scenes. This movie is, in itself, a comedy. It is a comedy film, a musical comedy, but it's not really a musical except for the Beatles songs that you hear in the movie. But it's this, I love when they make these sort of alternate universe, Elseworlds type movies, because they do make you think. And, you know, I thought a lot during this movie, not just about the Beatles' legacy, but also, like I said, would these songs really work? Would they be popular considering what people think is popular now? And that's a great thing. But it's all about the characters. It's all about Jack, Ellie, and of course Deborah Hammer and everything he deals with. And also he's got this guilt because the movie, and God, what a great movie. Go see this damn thing today, dude. Trust me on this one. Go see this movie today. In the movie, he's got this weird guilt because he knows that the songs he is singing and performing are not his. But nobody in this universe has any idea because the Beatles never existed in this timeline, or at least they never put out these songs. So he is essentially plagiarizing. He's stealing, you know, songs that aren't his, but nobody knows it. So then the question kind of makes you wonder, like, what if that was you? What if you were an artist right now, right? And Leonardo da Vinci never existed and you painted the Mona Lisa. Would the Mona Lisa matter in 2019? Would people care? I don't think so. I do not think people would care about the Mona Lisa in 2019. It's just a picture of a lady. It wouldn't have had the historical significance that Da Vinci had. So these kind of, you know, conundrums are all over your brain as you're watching this movie, which is why I like the movie so much, and because the acting is so good too. Like I said, Himesh Patel is so likable. Even when he's a prick in the movie, he's so likable, and he's dealing with this weird sort of guilt, but he's enjoying his fame, but he's not enjoying it as much as he should. And one of the big themes of the film is, you know, fame and money and all that might seem nice, but there are bigger things in the world. There are much bigger things in the world than money and fame, and I think that Jack's character realized it. I mean, I want to go see the movie again because I really enjoyed this world. I want to show this movie to every Beatles fan that I know because it's so good. I mean, there's so many little things too that are like, they have little like I guess references or homages to like hardcore Beatles lore. Like there's a scene, for example, where Jack goes to Penny Lane barbershop, you know, the barbershop Penny Lane, to get inspiration, quote inspiration, because, you know, the songs aren't really his, but he wants to convince people that I went to Penny Lane. He goes to the strawberry fields. He goes to Eleanor Rigby's grave. But there's so many things that just tie back into Beatles lore, and so many. It was a really, really well made movie. I enjoyed this film so much. If you are a Beatles fan, you need to see this movie. You got to have it in your collection. You have to. That's number one. And number two, even if you're not a Beatles fan, the movie might even make you a Beatles fan. But if you like good movies like this that make you think and are sort of thought-provoking comedies and really look at, like, it's not really the centerpiece, it's very subtle, but it looks at how shady the record business is. Like, the record business is pretty shady, and it really shows how greedy executives are. It really shows it in this film, and boardroom meetings and all kinds of stuff like that. How artists don't have full control even though they should? What if an artist did have full control? There's all kinds of good stuff like that in the film, even if you're not a Beatles fan. But obviously, if you are a Beatles fan, you will get much more out of Yesterday. So go see the movie. Fantastic film. Really enjoyed it. I love this movie so much. I mean, it wasn't the best movie of the year, but I really, really loved it, and I will be buying the Blu-ray when it comes out. All right, that's it. Thank you. Let me know what you think about Yesterday in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all soon.